We are starting a new series today, and before I do that, I just want to say a couple things, not by way of announcement, but way of celebration. One, a couple of weeks ago, Caring Solutions was here, and we had been collecting baby bottles of change. And so I just want to share this with you. It says, Pastor Rick, what a blessing it was to be with you all on Sunday. Your heart for this work and your incredible gift through the bottles is such an encouragement. Looking forward to partnering with you. Now, we collected baby bottles for, about a month or so. And yesterday I was asking people how much they thought we gave through the baby bottles. And my wife was really optimistic. She was like, $3,000. And I was like, well, not quite that much. And those little baby bottles of change, and I guess there were 25 or 30 of them, $617. And so that is awesome. That just really is awesome, and that's a great ministry. Being part of saving children's lives and enabling parents to be equipped, better equipped, to bring a child into the world. That's just awesome to be part of that ministry over in Warner Robins. And so we're excited about that. I wanted to celebrate with y'all today. And as you could tell, as you got here today, there were some things that were a little different. And yesterday we did a work day, and I think I called it Project 140 or something. And we had some big projects. If you remember last year, we gave an offering, and $4,000 of that offering was to replace the roof on the children's building up there and for the church sign, as well as we sent $4,000 off to different mission projects, one in the Middle East, one in Texas, one in here locally, and one in somewhere in Seven Bridges to Recovery up in Atlanta. So we sent $4,000 off to those four missions deals, and then we had $4,000, and our roof came in a little bit higher than we expected. It ended up right about $5,200, and the church sign was right about what we thought, but because the giving was above and beyond our goal of $4,000 for those two projects, we were able to get, obviously if you saw today, the roof was done. As you pulled on the property, hopefully you saw the new church sign. It's a little bit better than the faded banner we had, just a little bit. But anyway, so those were some of the projects. Obviously, all of this stuff up here was done yesterday. We had somebody donate to our church this projector up here, and you would not believe it if I pulled it down to look at it, but that projector weighs about 3 pounds, and cost about $1,500. And so somebody gave us that. It's very high power, sort of high def, new technology, that kind of stuff. So that was one of the projects yesterday. Several things. I couldn't list everything, but here's what I did want to list. The way I figured it up, we had about between 22 and 25 people here yesterday working throughout the day. And the way I figured it up with all the hours, we were right about 150 man hours over the course of this week. There were a couple people who were here a couple of days during the week prepping some stuff. But 150 man hours, hands-on, doing the work, getting it done. And so I think obviously the benefit, you can just see the benefit of those things. And so I just want to say thank you for those of you who came and did that. If you go up towards the other building, you'll notice that they repainted the whole front porch, the railings, the ramp, everything up there just looks fresh and brand new. Even painted all the way around the foundation of the house. So it's all painted. So everything up there looks brand new. You may want to just at least glance up there as you walk out of here today and all of that. So I just say a big, huge thank you for all of you that were able to help us with that. And a big, huge thank you for everybody that was able to support that Caring Solutions ministry. As we start this series called Family Matters, there's always a temptation for the pastor. I can either talk about all of the superficial family stuff and let us all walk around here and feeling good about ourselves, and we can all pat each other on the back because we're so great and we just have such great family or whatever. And I can just talk about sort of the superficial stuff, or we can really sort of dig down a little deeper to the roots of our family, to the roots of maybe a good family situation, to the roots of maybe a bad family situation, and that we can dig in and really talk about the nitty-gritty, the dirty stuff. I mean, the stuff that we really need to talk about, but a lot of times nobody wants to talk about. What's it called? The elephant in the room. That's a temptation that I have to wrestle with. And going into this series, I just decided real quickly, right up front, I don't want to talk about all the I don't want to get into the timeout chair versus the spanking debate. I'm not into that. I don't want to do you can read this book, but I don't want to do the 5 love languages of children study as part of what I preach. Great book. You need to read it. But that isn't what I want to focus our time on. I really want to, this illustration sort of popped to me this week. How many of you have ever been out on the lake? Okay. And as you're out on the lake, you see these little things just sort of bobbing like this, right? Buoys, right? And buoys are there, and a boat will go whipping by, and that buoy, it may bob up and down, but it really doesn't move off course. And there's a reason for that, and there's a reason it's put there. I'll never forget when I did my triathlon now several years ago. They had the course outlined in these buoys. You know, just you had to stay and just go around the buoys to get all the way around the circle and get there. And a lot of times these buoys, what I would relate to is sort of those superficial topics that we talk about, but what we don't realize is every single one of those buoys is what? Anchored down below. It may be 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet below, but somewhere there's an anchor, something holding that buoy in place. So that when the wave comes by, some guy on a boat whizzing by, or when a storm comes and the currents and all that in the lake are sort of wishing around, the buoy stays where it's at. And that's sort of what I want to talk about is those anchors. I want to talk about the important stuff. I want to talk about the stuff that if we will do it right, will greatly enhance and greatly help us to have great families. And so that's what I want to do over the next 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to talk about family matters. I told somebody I felt really ingenious this week when I was working on our website and updating it. I said, we're talking about family matters because family matters. Isn't that just, don't you just go, you're going to leave here today going, our pastor is so smart. How did he come up with that? I mean, I didn't Google it. I didn't search it. I came up with that whole thing. But that's what we want to talk about is family matters. And today I want to start with the number one question that everyone asks themselves, but very few answer. Everyone asks themselves this question, but very few answer. And here's the question. Did you see how I did that? I looked over there. What will be my legacy? That's a very important question. And every single one of you out there, and myself included, ask ourselves that question. You know how I know that? Because the way you live every day is leading towards the legacy you'll leave. And we're going to look at several different people and several different scriptures and several different passages to help give us some good guidance on leaving a good legacy. But the way we live every day is developing our legacy. But very few of us, and I wouldn't ask you to raise your hand because I know there would probably only be maybe 1 or 2, have ever sat down in a quiet moment and asked yourselves, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? You see, you're determining every day by the way you live, the things you do, the things you say, the places you go, how you spend your money, where you put your effort and energy. I mean, you're determining every day what kind of legacy you'll leave, but I doubt any of us have ever sat down and go, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? And if I want to leave this kind of legacy, what do I really need to do to make it happen? What do I need to do to make my legacy work, to make it, to end up where I want to end up? What do I got to do to get from today to then? And that's the number one question that everybody is asking, but very few people take the time to answer. Let me play this little word game with you. If I say George Washington, you say first president. That's a legacy. If I say Thomas Edison, you say inventor. There's his legacy. If I say Michael Jackson, you probably say... All right, you say all of that. I was going to say King of Pop, but you say something like that, and that's his legacy. If I say Rick Warren, you probably say 40 Days of Purpose or Purpose-Driven Life. A book that has sold, I think it's like number 2 or 3 on the all-time list of books being sold. But that's a legacy for him, is that Purpose-Driven Life book and the things that have flowed out of it. If I say Billy Graham, you say godly evangelist, best evangelist of all time, led probably more people than most of us combined would lead to Christ over the course of his lifetime, now 95. But that's a legacy. Now, you don't know everything about any of those people. I watched a documentary last week about George Washington. Maybe that's why he was sort of in my mind. And it covered a lot, and I learned a lot that I didn't know about George Washington, but it didn't cover everything. I didn't know everything about George Washington, but what I do know about him is his legacy. I don't know everything about Rick Warren. I know a little bit about him. He is he's a little bit older than myself, so sort of a contemporary. He's a pastor. I'm a pastor, so we're sort of peers. He wouldn't know my name from a hole in the wall, but I know his name, and I have his blog and follow him on Twitter and all this kind of stuff. But I know his legacy. And so the question today for us as we jump into this family series, and I hope you may not even see the whole picture today, but I hope as we go throughout these next several weeks, you're going to see how all of this ties together into our families. And it really doesn't matter what your family looks like. It doesn't matter if your family, if your family looks in the mirror or gets your picture taken back there. In fact, I want to encourage y'all over the next several weeks, when y'all come in, we'll be taking some family photos back on that back wall. There's some frames hanging. Stop and get your picture taken. We want you to do that over the next several weeks. And we're going to use them for some different things, but just stop by there next Sunday as you come in. Jason will snap some pictures of you and your family. But when you get your picture taken, that picture in that frame, it may be one person. It may be 2, could be 8, or whatever. So I want to encourage you to get your picture taken, because there's lost my train of thought here. We're creating and leaving this legacy, and it doesn't matter what your family looks like. That's where I was at. So today I want to talk about the 3 truths about your lasting legacy. 3 truths about your lasting legacy. Here's the first truth. The first truth is, 1, we will all leave a legacy. You don't even have to try, and you will leave a legacy. Now, I will say this to you. If you're not purposeful and you really don't try, you may not leave the kind of legacy you want. If you really don't make an effort, you really don't take some intentional steps in your life, you really just sort of play it by ear and fly by the seat of your pants and just sort of willy-dilly through it, you'll leave a legacy, but it may not be the one you thought you would leave. You may just try to manage through your childbearing or child-rearing years, and you may not give much thought to it, but one day when you die, and we all will, you will leave a legacy. You don't have to try to leave a legacy. You don't have to work to leave a legacy. But we will all leave a legacy. And the question is, will it be a good legacy or a bad legacy? Every day we are working on our legacy. And again, it doesn't matter what your family looks like, you will leave a legacy. Listen to what Joshua said in chapter 24. And you have to understand who Joshua is. Maybe you don't know who Joshua is. Let me just give you a quick history lesson real quick. Moses had brought the people of Egypt to the promised land. Okay? He had brought them to the promised land. Brought them out of captivity, out of Egypt. Brought them through the Red Sea, where it swallowed up Pharaoh's armies. Brought them to the brink of the promised land. The land that God had already said, I'm already giving this to you. You're not going to have any problems. And so what he did, he said, choose 12 spies and send 12 spies in. And they sent 12 spies in to take a look around. What's there? What do we need to worry about if we're going into battle? What do we need to be concerned with? And so out of the 12, they all came back. 10 of the 12 said, man, we're not going in there. They got too many soldiers. They're too big. They're going to just annihilate us. They'll pick us off one by one as we go marching in. They're just going to destroy us. There's just no way. And there were 2 of the 12 that said, hey, God has already promised it to us. In fact, they said, let's go get the land God's given us. 2 out of 12. 2 out of 12. And what happened was, that would probably happen today too, the 10 won out. The 10 went out. Their argument seemed more compelling. Their argument, threw all the people into a frenzy. They're like, we're not going in there because those guys say they're giant, they're huge, they're going to kill us, they'll annihilate us. We're not taking that chance. We're not going that way. All the while, these 2 guys, Joshua, who we're getting ready to read about, and Caleb, said, let's go take the land. God's already given it to us. Let's go get it. So because of that, part of the consequences that came for the nation not going in there was that none of the people who decided not to go in there would ever get to go in there. And so they had to wait around for all of those people to die off. Moses was one of those people. Moses was one, and when Moses died, the reins got handed to Joshua to lead the people. And the people that had been born after that decision, the people who had come along later in years, because it was a large gap of years, they were the ones who got to go in. And so Joshua is leading the people in. So Joshua, he isn't leading a group of 5 or 10. He's leading this huge nation now in to go take this promised land. And here's what he says. It says, so fear the Lord and serve Him wholeheartedly. Put away forever the idols of your ancestors, and the idols your ancestors worshipped when they lived beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt. Serve the Lord alone. Verse 15, he says, but if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. In fact, he's saying, choose today what kind of legacy you want to leave. Choose today who you're going to serve. Choose today what kind of legacy you want to leave. He said, would you prefer the gods of your ancestors, the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates? Or will it be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now live? Then Joshua says this, and here's where he's being very intentional about his legacy. He says, but as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. We're all going to leave a legacy, good or bad. And we have to be intentional if we really want to leave a good legacy. If we purposely want to leave a good legacy, a godly legacy even, we have to be purposeful about that. And that's what Joshua did here. He said, as for me and my family, we're serving the Lord. He said to everybody, he goes, hey, choose what kind of legacy you want to leave. Choose what kind of legacy you want to leave. You get to work out your legacy for yourself. You do whatever you want to do for yourself. But as for me and my family, we're going to serve the Lord. And so today, if I say the word Joshua, most people who study the Bible, they would say a man of God. That's the legacy. But Joshua had to be very intentional about leaving that kind of legacy. And just as I would say man of God for Joshua, if I say the word Judas, immediately you say in your head betrayer. That's a legacy. If I say the word Cain, if you study the Bible, if I say the word Cain, you say murderer. That's a legacy. So you see, we're all going to leave a legacy. It isn't a matter of if we will, it's a matter of what kind will we leave. What kind of legacy will we leave? Point number 2, or truth number 2 today, your legacy is created in the dash. Your legacy is created in the dash. Hey, we're all here today, and that's great. Chances are we may not all be here next year at the same time. Very well could happen. I may not be here next year at this time. I could be dead. I could be passed on. All of us are going to go, as the Bible calls it, by the way of the grave. And so that's a very real reality for all of us. And sometimes we live our life as if that's never going to happen, but the reality is it is going to happen. And you know what's funny is when you die, they do this little thing where it emphasizes the day you were born. And it emphasizes the day you died. It's called a headstone. And on the headstone, if it was mine, it would say Rick Harris, born November 5th, 1967. And then over here it would say died or passed on or kicked the bucket, whatever it would say, on whatever date that is. And what's funny is when you die, they emphasize those two dates. You know what they don't emphasize? What happened in Rick's life between 1967 and the day that he passed on? What they do, they put a little dash on your headstone. And see, your legacy is not created by the day you're born. And maybe unless it's a very unusual circumstance, like maybe 9/11 or something like that, your legacy is usually not created in the day that you died. Your legacy is created in the dash. Your legacy is created in the days or the hours or the years that are encapsulated by that dash on your headstone. And so the question is, if we want to leave a good legacy, if we want to be intentional about leaving a good legacy, we need to realize that it's created in the dash. It's not created on the day you were born. It's not created probably for the most part on the day that you died. It's created there in the middle. It's created today. Today you're creating part of your legacy. How do you want to be known by your family when you pass on? How do you want to be known by your co-workers? How do you want to be known by your children? How do you want to be known by your neighbors? How do you want to be known when time has no more for you, when time has ceased to exist, whether you have passed on into eternity? It's created in the dash. Paul gives us some guidance in Romans chapter 12 to how to live a good dash. How to live your life in such a way that the dash matters. How to live in such a way that somewhere down the road when somebody's bringing up your name, that dash will have the kind of lasting effect that you wanted it to have. Listen to what he says in Romans chapter 12. He says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way we worship Him." It says, "Do not copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are, but be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourself by the faith God has given us." Then you drop down to verse 9 and he continues to give us this guidance on how to live a good dash. It says, don't just pretend to love others. It says, really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. You could sum it up in this. If you want to live a good dash, I wrote down here, love God, love others, and love the world. If you want to live your life in such a way to leave a good legacy someday, to when people talk about you, just so you know, people will talk about you before you're dead. So you're working on your legacy now. And so you just can't say, well, forget them. I don't care what they think. I'm dead and gone. No, you're developing your legacy now. And people will already see you in a certain light. People already see you. They'll already connect to you and to who you are, to the things you've done, the things you've said, the places you've went or whatever. They're going to already connect to you, your legacy. And so Paul says here, if you really want to do it right and do it well, you have to love people, you have to love God, and you have to love the world. Your legacy is created in the dash. In the dash. Here's the third truth for today. You cannot leave a godly legacy by living for yourself. You cannot leave a godly legacy by living for yourself. And can I just go ahead and tell you up front, the biggest struggle you will face, the biggest person you will have to fight in life is you. The biggest struggle you're going to have as you go throughout life, whether you're young or middle-aged or old, the biggest struggle you're going to have, the biggest person you're going to have to wrestle with is you. It's not going to be your spouse. It's not going to be your children. It's going to be you, because inside each of us is this inborn desire to be selfish. It's just born in there. It's natural. I always say this. If you don't believe me, just go back to the nursery. Just go watch little children. I'm sure no parent is at home going, "Now, Johnny, when you get to church today, I want you to go for that football. And if anybody comes towards you, you punch them." I would hope none of you are doing that. But if you go back there, you're probably going to see some little boy running for the football. And when he gets it and somebody else comes and reaches for it, he's probably going to punch him. You don't have to train a child to be selfish. It's natural. You have to train them not to be selfish. And if you're going to leave a godly legacy, part of the struggle you're going to have is fighting against yourself, against your selfish nature, against your selfish desire. Now, it doesn't help that we live in a culture that sort of accentuates that very thought. I mean, we live in a world today that sort of says, get what you can for yourself and forget everybody else. Hey, whatever makes you feel good, do it. Hey, whatever you want to do, go ahead. We sort of live in a culture that just sort of pumps that into our veins. You watch any TV, you see any commercials come on, you're just going to get bombarded. So not only is it born in you to be selfish, you're getting bombarded by our culture to tell you to be selfish. And so the battle you have to face is, how do I leave a godly legacy? You cannot be selfish. You cannot live for yourself. Several people in the Bible wrote about this, and again, just to give us some guidance on how can I really put that into action. A man named Solomon, he was one of King David's sons. He was known as the wisest man ever. And so if you go to read the books of the Bible that he wrote, what you'll see is there's a constant theme throughout all of them about wisdom. And if you read them really closely, Proverbs being one of them, Ecclesiastes another, you read through those, you know what you're going to find out? You're going to sit there and go, wow, he was pretty smart. Wow, that really makes sense. Wow, I might need to read this cat a little bit more. But he had a good handle on how to sort of leave a godly legacy and how not to live for yourself. Listen to what he wrote in Ecclesiastes 7. He said, "A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume." A good reputation is more valuable than a costly perfume. Now, I haven't bought perfume in a while, right, baby? Haven't bought any perfume in a while, but it can get pretty expensive. But you know what's more valuable than that? Your reputation. So if you want to leave a godly legacy, one of the things you have to do is you have to protect your reputation. You have to live in such a way that people can't say this about you or that about you. Can I tell you one of the hardest things for me to do is, I love Facebook. I'm on there, and I'm connected to people from my high school days all the way up through current. A lot of you guys are on my Facebook, and it's hard for me sometimes to go on Facebook when people just post pictures of all this different stuff that they're doing, situations that their lives are in. Just, I don't know how a better word to say, immoral, sinful. Nothing, I'm just like, oh. And I'll just be honest with you and just be point blank. I see a lot more of those that make me go, oh, than I see, oh, wow, they're reading Scripture. Oh, wow, look, they're praying. Oh, wow, look at that Scripture. You know what I'm saying? So one of the things, if you're going to leave a godly legacy, is you need to protect your reputation. Proverbs chapter 3, again, this is Solomon writing it. It says, "Never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart." Get this. "Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation." You will find you will find favor with both God, which is obviously is the most important, okay, but also with people. So if you really want to plan and be intentional about leaving a godly legacy for your children, for your family, or just even at the place you work. I mean, what would you want the conversation to be the day after your funeral at the place you work? Do you want people walking around going, "Gosh, I'm glad they're gone. Why did it take so long?" I mean, is that what you really want them saying the day after your funeral where you work? I mean, when you're gone, do you really want your kids sitting around going, "Gosh, I'm glad that's over"? No. So what I'm saying to you today is be intentional, purposeful about leaving a godly legacy. And to do that, you need to be loyal. You need to have a good reputation. And then obviously there's no better model. Let's just be honest. There's no greater model we could even come from or find than Jesus Christ himself. And listen to what he said in Matthew chapter 20. "Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man," he's referring to himself there, "came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life a ransom for many." To leave your life a ransom for many. So if you want to leave a godly legacy, 3 important parts. Be loyal. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it. And if you're not going to do it, just tell them, "I'm not going to do it." But be loyal. Have a good reputation. Make it so, I heard this description one time. Make it so that if somebody walked around and they said, "Did you hear about Rick Harris? I heard he was out cheating on his wife," that somebody would gasp and go, "No way, not Rick Harris." That's what it means to have a good reputation. Because if you don't have a good reputation and somebody says that, you know what they say? "I knew it. I knew he was a snake. I just knew it." But if you have a good reputation and somebody throws out some accusation like that about you or with your name in it, the people around would go, "No, not him. I don't think so. I don't believe it. I don't believe it." That's what it means to have a good reputation. And then learn how to serve others. Learn how to serve others. Put yourself after others. I have down here, in the end, the legacy we leave may never be seen by our nation. When I mention Rick Warren and I say purpose-driven life, I mean he's worldwide. When I say Billy Graham, he's worldwide. If I say Jesus Christ, he's worldwide. And sometimes our struggle with our legacies, we think, well, it'll just never be big enough that nobody will ever see it or nobody will ever know it. But the reality is, on the day that you die or when you are past and gone, the people you really want to know about your legacy isn't the nation. It's your family. It's your close friends. It's your coworkers. That's really, in the end, who you really care about what your legacy is to them, is through that. We went to a conference about a month ago now up in Atlanta. Heather and Jason and Matt and myself, called Catalyst, and it's a leadership type thing. And so we went up there. It was a great day, and Andy Stanley preached, and Craig Rochelle preached. And listen to what Andy Stanley said. It's probably one of the most profound things I've ever heard. Not just from him, just in general. But it says, and I have to here's some food for thought. So if you're taking notes, that'll fill that in. What if your greatest contribution isn't something you do, but someone you raise? Think about that for a minute. I'm not inventing the light bulb. Not an inventor. I'm probably not going to write some big best-selling book. I'm not a writer. Probably not going to go around the world preaching and be on TV and that kind of thing. I'm not going to have that platform. Because a lot of times we think, well, if I could do something, great. But what if the greatest contribution you make in life isn't something you do, but someone you raise? On November 7th, 1918, the first of 4 children was born to William and his wife, Morrow. William and Morrow were dairy farmers in North Carolina, and they went on to have 3 other children. But this first boy, the oldest child, the first boy that they had, was a very good boy. In fact, all of the children were very well behaved, very well mannered. They were raised in church. And at the age of 16, this first boy that was born, this first sibling, this first son that was born, was in a revival meeting, and he heard a preacher preach. And as the preacher preached, he became very convicted that though he was a good boy, a well-behaved guy, a well-behaved teenager, a well-behaved young man, that he still had sin in his life and that he needed Jesus Christ to forgive him of his sins. And that night in that revival meeting, that 16-year-old, well-mannered, well-behaved, well-liked, well-thought-of boy made a commitment to Jesus Christ. Now, when he made that commitment, he did not know anything about what would follow. It wasn't, hey, if you make this commitment to me, then down the road I'm going to do this with you. If you make this commitment, then here's what I'm going to do with you. If you make this commitment, here's what's going to happen. Nothing. He just made this commitment to Christ. And over the course of the next years, almost 80 years, this man has spoken to over 215 million people. That's the story of Billy Graham. Born to some dairy farmers, raised in a good home, went to church. He was a good church boy. He was well-mannered, well-behaved, well-liked. But it wasn't until he made a commitment to Christ that his legacy began to develop. And today he's 95 years old. And what's his legacy? What's his parents' legacy? It wasn't that, hey, they were the greatest dairy farmers in North Carolina. Man, they could make milk like nobody's milk. Man, they could churn some butter down there. They're that Graham family. No, their legacy's not about that. In fact, I had lunch one day with Billy Graham's brother. Monica and I, years ago, was being interviewed for a church down there, and the pastor said, hey, I want you to go have lunch with me with this guy. I just talked to him a lot. And so we went in there, and it was so funny. It was really wow. Like when he's talking, I'm going, I've heard that voice before. Where's that voice? I mean, Monica and I are sort of looking at each other like, should we know this guy? Old farm boy came in. Bibbed overalls, gray hair, a little longer than you might think. I mean, just an old guy. Sitting down at the table, we had chicken salad sandwiches or something, this little hole-in-the-wall restaurant. As we left, the pastor told us that he didn't really introduce him this way, and I don't know if he's trying to read us or read this guy, or I don't know what was happening, but he said, that just so happens to be Billy Graham's brother. One of the richest men today in North Carolina. Now, what is William and Morrow's legacy? It wasn't something that they did. It wasn't that they churned butter and they milked cows. All that's well and good, and it needs to be done. We like milk. Their legacy is a son who made a commitment to Christ, and over the course of the next almost 80 years has spoken to over 215 million people and led them to Christ. See, you have to be intentional about the legacy you're going to leave. You can't just think it's all going to fall into place. You can't just think, well, it'll all just sort of happen. If you leave it up to that, it will happen. But it will not be the legacy you want to leave. Why are we talking about family matters? Because regardless of what your family looks like, regardless of what shape, size, color, number that's in your family, none of that matters. But what begins to matter is, what will be your legacy? Are you working intentionally to leave your legacy, to leave a godly legacy in life? Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for today, and I thank you for these scriptures, Lord, I do thank you for the illustration or just the example of people like Billy Graham and Rick Warren and others who have just made an incredible impact and left an incredible legacy, even though they're not even dead yet. But Lord, their legacy just is incredible. And Lord, I pray that each of us today would just be considering of ourselves and asking ourselves, what kind of legacy are we leading? What are we leaving? What will our coworkers say about us the day after we're gone? What will our spouses think of us after we pass on? What will our children say at our funeral? What will be said of us? Will it be, hey, they loved the Lord, they served the Lord, they served God, they did what God asked? Or will it be, he was a grumpy old man who never had any fun? He was a tightwad. He was a this, he was a that. Lord, I pray that you would help each of us today to begin to get intentional and ask ourselves the hard question of, one, what kind of legacy am I leaving? Does it match up with the kind of legacy I want to leave? Lord, I pray today that if our answer to that is not yes, that Lord, maybe today we just ask for forgiveness, we just reboot, we start over today to build a godly legacy. One that when we are gone, we would be so glad to hear our children talk about us. To hear our spouse or our parents or our siblings to sit around in a living room and talk about our life. One that when we're actually gone from the place that we work, that there may be some discussions of, I sure miss their smile, I sure miss their helpfulness, I sure miss the way they served us while they worked. Lord, I pray today you just work in our hearts. Stir us up inside.